Every day, he willingly drank the poison his enemies served him with a smile. It was not a vial of dark liquid, but a cup of carefully crafted words, and Leo, the finest woodcarver in the 5 valleys, accepted it as if it were wine. He would stand in his workshop, the morning sun illuminating the delicate curls of cedar and oak on the floor, and listen. His rivals, led by the impeccably dressed and silver-tongued Silas, would stop by under the guise of friendly admiration. Another masterpiece, Leo, Silas would begin, running a dismissive finger over a newly carved bird's wing. Though, if I may be so bold, is not the arch of it a little aggressive? The market prefers subtlety. Another rival, Marcus, would nod sagely. He's right. Your passion is your gift, Leo, but it can be overwhelming. You must learn to tame it. They spoke of taming his passion as one would speak of taming a wild beast. And Leo, whose heart was as soft as the pine wood he used for practice, believed them. He saw their critiques not as jealousy, but as the generous wisdom of peers. That afternoon, he would take his finest chisel and sand down the aggressive arch of the wing until it was timid, common, and dead. The choice he faced each morning was simple and agonizing: to trust the fire in his own soul that guided his hands, or to trust the cool, collected voices of men who had never created anything that truly lived. He chose them, believing humility was the path to perfection. His first attempt to solve the problem was to work even harder, to internalize their advice more deeply. He began to anticipate their criticism, softening edges and dulling his boldest designs before they even saw them. His workshop, once a sanctuary of vibrant creation, became a sterile laboratory of self-doubt. The raw, breathtaking energy that made his work famous began to fade. The choice was no longer about art, it was about acceptance. One evening, a royal courier arrived with a proclamation. The Queen had announced a grand commission, a magnificent centerpiece for the Great Hall, a work that would be remembered for a century. The carver chosen would be granted the royal seal and a fortune. As Leo held the parchment, Silas appeared at his door, his smile wider than ever. "A momentous opportunity, my friend," he said, his eyes glinting. "Now, more than ever, you must listen to sound advice. This is no time for experiments." The stakes had just been raised from personal pride to a life-changing legacy, and the choice Leo had to make was no longer just about his art, but about his entire future. Leo locked himself away, driven by a desperate need to win the royal commission. He began his work on a grand block of ancient walnut, but his hands, once so certain, now hesitated with every cut. Silas's voice was a constant whisper in his ear. "Is it too bold? Is it too different?" He remembered Marcus's warning about taming his passion, and so he smothered every instinct that felt uniquely his. He carved a stag, but instead of the wild, defiant creature he saw in his mind's eye, he carved a creature of placid obedience. He planed its antlers until they were smooth and symmetrical, stripping them of their chaotic, natural glory. Each day was a battle against himself. When he tried to add a flourish of intricate, untamed foliage at the base, he stopped, imagining the condescending smiles of his rivals. He sanded it down into simple, predictable leaves. The pressure mounted in a suffocating spiral. He stopped sleeping, his nights filled with the ghosts of the beautiful things he had sacrificed for the sake of being acceptable. His workshop grew dim, thick with the dust of his abandoned ideas. His hands, once his source of joy, became mere tools executing the will of others. He felt himself falling, losing grip not just on his craft, but on his own identity. The day of the presentation arrived. Leo, gaunt and exhausted, unveiled his stag. The judges were polite. They called it technically proficient and well executed. But there was no gasp of awe, no silence of wonder. It was a piece of wood, expertly shaped, but utterly devoid of a soul. The commission was awarded to Silas, whose carving of a perfectly symmetrical, uninspired royal crest was deemed a reflection of noble stability. Leo felt the floor drop out from beneath him. He had not only lost, but he had lost by betraying the very gift that made him worthy of competing in the first place. He returned to his empty workshop, the silence screaming at him. He looked at the stag, a monument to his own cowardice. That night, a new complication arrived in the form of a letter. It was from the Merchant Guild, informing him that due to his recent stylistic deviations and failure to secure the royal commission, his apprentices were being reassigned to more commercially viable masters. He was not only a failure, he was now completely alone. In the depths of his despair, Leo decided to destroy the stag. He raised a heavy mallet, his knuckles white, ready to splinter the symbol of his shame into 1,000 pieces. Just as he was about to swing, the door creaked open. An old man stood there, one of his earliest patrons, a quiet gentleman named Arthur who had not visited him in years. Arthur walked slowly around the lifeless stag, his gaze taking in every compromised line. He did not offer sympathy or advice. He simply looked at Leo and asked a single, devastating question: whose fear made this? The word fear struck Leo like a physical blow. Not failure, not caution, but fear. In that moment, the truth crashed down on him. The poison he had been drinking was not criticism, it was fear. Their fear of his talent, which they had expertly disguised and fed to him until it became his own. For a fleeting moment, he felt a surge of power. He saw the path back. He would not destroy the stag. He would use it as a reminder. He would start again, carving something for himself, something born not of fear, but of the fire he had almost allowed to be extinguished. Hope was a fragile spark in the darkness. But this hope was a trap. A week later, as Leo began sketching a new design, a phoenix rising from a chaotic burst of flames, all sharp angles and wild energy, Silas and his group appeared. They saw the rejected stag still on its pedestal and the new, defiant sketches. Silas's face was a mask of practiced concern. "Leo, my friend," he said, his voice dripping with false pity. "We heard you lost the apprentices. We came to offer our support." He glanced at the new drawing. "Ah," he sighed. "I see. You are retreating into your old habits. That, aggression. It is this very impulse that cost you the commission. We were only trying to help you overcome your weakness." He turned to the others. "You see. He cannot help himself." They nodded, their faces a chorus of solemn agreement. They had not just made him fail, they had perfectly framed his unique genius as the very source of that failure. The trap snapped shut. In that moment, Leo was in the lowest place he had ever been. He did not just believe he was a bad artist, he believed that the best part of him, the very core of his creative soul, was a flaw that needed to be erased. My friend, have you ever been in a place so dark you believed the darkness was your own fault? That is where Leo was. He sat on the floor of his workshop, a tomb of silent wood, and felt nothing. The fire was gone. But then, in the gloom, he looked down at his own hands. He saw the landscape of his life etched into them, the faint white scars from a slipped chisel, the deep, hard calluses from thousands of hours of devotion, the strength that could command the most stubborn oak. These hands knew the truth. They had not been built by caution. They were not shaped by the opinions of other men. They were the product of his own untamed passion. The epiphany did not come like a lightning bolt, but like the slow, quiet dawn. The poison was not what they served him. The poison was his own decision to open his mouth and drink. He did not need to fight them. He did not need to prove them wrong. He only needed to stop drinking. He stood up. He walked past the timid stag and the wild sketches. He picked up a small, forgotten block of dark mahogany. With a newfound clarity, he began to carve. He did not carve for the queen, or for the guild, or for his rivals. He carved for his own scarred hands. The annual guild exhibition was a week later. Silas stood beside his prize-winning crest, accepting praise. Then, a quiet murmur spread through the crowd. Leo had entered. He carried no grand statue. He walked to an empty corner and placed the small block of mahogany on a cloth. On it, he had carved a single, cupped hand. It was not a perfect hand, it was scarred, calloused, and strong. And held within its palm was a single, perfectly formed drop of liquid. It was a masterpiece of tension and meaning, a tribute to both vulnerability and strength. The crowd gathered, drawn by its quiet, undeniable power. They saw the story in it without a single word being spoken. Silas finally pushed his way to the front, his smile tight. He prepared his next cup of poison. An interesting little piece, Leo, he began. A bit sentimental, perhaps, but... He trailed off. Leo did not look at him. He was watching a young girl who was staring at the carving with wide, wondrous eyes. He simply gave the smallest, calmest of smiles and said nothing. He had refused the cup. Silas stood there, his words unspoken, his power gone. He was invisible. Leo had learned the ultimate truth. The most powerful response to those who offer you poison with a smile is not to argue, not to fight, but to simply let them see you refuse to drink. Your life is not shaped by the poison you are offered, it is shaped by the moment you finally decide you are no longer thirsty.